Hello. Good evening. Welcome, and thank you for being with us tonight, September 25th, 2018, for the Berkeley School Board Candidate Forum. My name's Nick Pilch of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not support or oppose candidates or parties. The advocacy arm of the League may take positions on issues such as ballot measures. However, this forum is presented by the Voter Services and Education arm of the League, which does not take positions or advocate for them. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates, the Berkeley City College Voter-Friendly Campus, and the Berkeley NAACP have all agreed to participate under ground rules set for this forum. These ground rules have been posted outside the room. Please switch all electronic devices to silent. Campaign literature or other forms of campaigning, such as buttons and t-shirts, signs, etc., are not permitted inside the forum room in order to maintain neutrality. We are videotaping tonight's forum, broadcasting through Berkeley Community Media, and the session will be available on our website at LWVBAE, stands for League of Women Voters, Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville.org, or through votersedge.org/CA. You can tweet us at LWVBAE. We ask that the audience hold their applause until the end so that we can hear all the candidates. We have one forum on the agenda tonight. There are 6 candidates running for this position. They are Ty Alper, Khadijah Brown, Norma J.F. Harrison, Drew Howard, Abdur Sikder, and Julie Sinai. Drew Howard is a candidate for this office who could not attend the forum tonight. Now let's go over a few ground rules. Each candidate has 1 minute for opening remarks. The order was determined by drawing lots. The timekeepers will signal candidates with colored signs marked 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and stop. As audience members arrived, our volunteers provided cards for submitting written questions. The questions will be screened to avoid duplication and personal attacks. The order of answering the questions will be alternated, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Again, timekeepers will signal candidates for when their time is up. There will be no separate rebuttals. However, the candidates may choose to use some of their 1 minute time to rebut a response given by another candidate. Following the questions, each candidate shall have 1.5 minutes for closing statements. Now let's begin our forum and begin with our first candidate, who will be Norma J.F. Harrison. And it's time for your opening remarks. You all have 1 minute. Norma?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Do you understand that age segregation is just a tool to keep people separated? That's the rule of the capitalist structure, is to keep us apart from each other so that they can get willing slaves, or slaves that don't recognize their relationship to production, into service for what you see around you that has now grown into an even more evident monstrosity, the system of retaining the rich and powerful, who buy the administrations, buy the legislatures, and are thereby owned by them. People might think that they're going to be able to elect a candidate who says good things. They all say the same thing, but they're all constrained by a system that doesn't permit them to do what, even if they did intend to do, they cannot do it.
Thank you. Khadijah?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Khadijah Brown, and I am a candidate for Berkeley School Board Director. As a 5th grade teacher, my firm belief is that education levels the playing field, provided that all students have access to quality education that is both equitable and accessible. As a proud product of Berkeley schools myself, and as a current president of my school site council, I'm committed to the academic and holistic success of our students. The time is now to do more work to close the opportunity and achievement gaps that plague our communities. I have a long history in identifying and assisting the needs of others and developing real-life solutions. I lead international service projects for education and health around the globe, and I will be a champion for closing the equity gap, an advocate for educational and workforce pathways. I will promote fiscal accountability and support best practices that provide the best education possible for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdur?
Good evening. My name is Abdur Shikdar, and I'm a candidate for the Berkeley School Board. I born in Bangladesh and growing up in Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, and US. And I think I'm a very unique candidate in terms of the diversity I have, the educational background. And I was lucky that I was educated in 5 countries. And I know we have a lot of issues in Berkeley School District, and especially funding and all others, achievement gap. And I know that we have board members working in the board for 12 years and more, actually, some of them. And still we don't have any change on achievement gap. So I was very surprised to do that, to hear that actually from the board meeting itself. So I think we need to change the face, to change the outcome. And I think I'm a very strong candidate to do that.
Thank you. Julie?
Hi, my name is Julie Sinai, and I'm also running for Berkeley School Board. And on this National Day of Voter Registration, I really want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting these kinds of forums. They're really important. I'm a longtime Berkeley resident. I have 2 Berkeley graduates. I'm a proud parent. And I'm happy to be able to contribute the resources that I've been able to garner in the city of Berkeley as a policymaker, as somebody who has worked on education from all levels of early childhood education, K-12, higher ed, to really harness the resources and the partnerships that we need to bring to our school districts so that we can have a vibrant, robust curriculum and focus on math and science and technology to make sure that our kids are ready for the economy of the Bay Area, and they're able to compete for living wage jobs. So I'm honored to be here tonight, and I'm excited to be part of the dialogue.
Thank you. Ty?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ty Alper. I'm running for re-election to the Berkeley School Board. I grew up in Berkeley. My wife grew up in Berkeley. The 2 of us went through the Berkeley Public Schools, graduated from Berkeley High. We have 3 kids in the schools now, one at Rosa Parks, one at Longfellow, and one at Berkeley High. In my day job, I'm on the faculty at the law school at UC Berkeley, where I train and supervise students in the representation of death row inmates, primarily in the Deep South. I ran for the board 4 years ago to be an independent parent educator voice for equity and excellence in our public schools. And I'm proud of the work that we've done over the last 4 years. We have a lot of challenges facing the district, and I'm looking forward to serving the community for 4 more years, and I'm looking forward to the questions tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for the candidates to answer your questions and a few of ours. We're going to be starting with Khadijah. And for the first question, we'd like to ask, can you tell us what does the school board do versus the responsibilities of the paid staff? And can you explain the difference and the importance of the difference?
Sure. So there is so much that the school board does. Specifically, I always like to think of the school board as the overarching umbrella for all of our departments, all of our services, and for all of our children. The school board has a couple of roles. The first is to serve as a listening campaign, especially during our school board meetings, to issues and other things that are going on within our district. The school board also has the ability to implement and add in more important things to our schools, especially as it relates to programming. Our school board is in charge of our fiscal accountability for our schools and making sure that we properly fund and budget our schools.
Thank you. Abdur?
The same question?
Yes.
Okay, so as I understand, the school board has quite a few responsibilities. One of them is approval of the budget and the salary for the superintendent, and also recruitment and all different kinds of decisions that Berkeley Unified School Districts require, and also oversee a lot of and even the charter school as well, public charter school and all others, their performance and the teachers' performance, and also they are responsible for the approval of curriculum that they teach in the school, different levels, and also they are responsible for the funding for the special need kids and all other needs for the children. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
So the board's responsible for setting policy and direction for the school board. It is the board's responsibility to make sure all of the children in the district are getting their academic needs met and that they're achieving in our communities. And it is our responsibility to hold our superintendent and the administration accountable to implementing those policies and procedures so all of our kids can succeed. It is up to the school board to look at data, to review what's working and what's not working, and provide direction to the superintendent and staff. It is up to the school board to look at the budget, to set priorities, and again, to make sure that our teachers and our students are getting what they need in order to deliver the curriculum and to get the supportive services so that they can succeed in the classroom. It is also a school board member's responsibility, which I am feeling extremely important, is to bring partnerships and resources to the schools, because it's really a community partnership with the city, our community-based organizations, and our other institutions in the city.
Thank you. Ty?
So I don't have much to add to what you all have said. I agree with all that. The board's ultimate responsibility is to set the mission and priorities of the district, and then the superintendent is responsible for carrying out that mission and those policies. But it's the board's responsibility, as Julie just mentioned, to not only to hire and evaluate the superintendent, but to hold the superintendent responsible for ensuring that the board's direction is carried out. And I think that providing support for our teachers and our staff to do what they need to ensure that all kids succeed is really why we're here, why the board does what it does. We're there to ensure that staff has what it needs and our employees have what they need to carry out that mission.
Thank you. Norma?
So along with the idea that age segregation is a brutality exacted upon us to control us, is the idea that we have to understand that we spend the dominant part of our days with people we don't kiss. That should cause us tremendous anguish. Instead, and I'm not saying we should spend every minute with our children or them with the parents, but there certainly isn't a natural mix of people's activities. Along with the repression that age segregation is race. Racism will persist as long as capitalism persists. It does not have a way out of being here. It is a tool of maintaining control over societies, and you cannot get rid of it by saying, I will get rid of racism in the schools or get rid of the education gap. It will not happen by saying so.
Thank you. Next question. If elected, what ideas do you have to use your position on the school board to prevent gang-related gun violence here in Berkeley? And we will start with Abdur.
Yes, thanks. A very good question, actually. So the violence in the school is absolutely not acceptable. And we need to do something about it. And we see that people talking, politicians talking, and directors talking all the time, years after years, but nothing changed. So we need to actually work with the police department, law enforcement department, and parents and guardians, and work together and find a way to stop this kind of violence in our school, because it's terrible. Like the young children, they involved with this kind of stuff is very unfortunate, and I think we can do better. We are the fifth economy of the world, and we don't have enough funding. I don't believe that. So we need to figure out a way to get that funding from Sacramento or even the capital. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
You know, I think it's a bigger issue about the presence of guns in our communities and guns across the country. And so I am very impressed with the student mobilization that's been going on in Berkeley High as well as across the country with students who demand action. They've been working to impact local policy, state policy, and federal policy. And it's not, I wouldn't restrict it to an issue of whether there's gang violence on school grounds. Is we need to make sure that our schools are safe, that all of our teachers and staff and the school community have been trained in active shooter training. We need to make sure that we get guns off the street, and I really support working on ordinances that make sure that anybody who has a legal gun in their house, make sure that they've got it locked up and inaccessible to any other individuals. And I think we need to make sure that our teachers and our staff and the adults in our community are vigilant and that we're working together to increase awareness with our youth.
Thank you. Ty?
Yeah, I mean, keeping our kids safe in our schools and around our schools is really our highest priority, and we need to address it in a number of different ways. There's, in addition to the things that Julie just mentioned, we also have infrastructure safety improvements that we're making in the wake of the recent tragedies across the country, in terms of Columbine locks and more fencing and securing the schools themselves. In terms of gang violence, in particular, we have excellent intervention counselors at the high school. Their caseloads are always too high. I wish we had more funding to hire more of them, but they are very aware of the community and what our kids are involved in. And I think the research has shown that when kids feel known and loved in the school and they have an adult looking out for them, that's the way that we can make impacts with those kids.
Thank you. Norma?
The place of school is to divide people into successful, not so successful, a little bit getting along, and unsuccessful. There's such a thing as failure that goes on in the school. There shouldn't be. There shouldn't be failure for anything. There shouldn't be failure for you and me. It is a tool, again, of division and oppression and suppression. Competition is the basis of it. You have to get ahead. You have to take advantage of opportunities. There shouldn't be opportunities. There should be activities that we all engage in according to our tastes and time that are out there that need to be engaged in. The idea that we have to compete with each other is cruel and wrong, and we have to declare against it in every way that we can see, especially to get rid of this idea that the child should not be working. It's all right for children to work.
Thank you. Khadijah?
I do think gun violence is a huge issue in all of our communities, not just gang-related gun violence, but gun violence in general. There's so much work that can be done to end gun violence and also keep it away from our schools. There are two really phenomenal programs, and if you have the time to look them up, I think it would be a phenomenal asset to our schools. There's the Start With Hello program and also the Say Something program. Both of those programs do lots of work to ensure that guns are not brought to school, and also that kids, when they come to school, they are noticed and aware. A lot of times you see a lot of gun violence in schools because the children say that they didn't have anyone to talk to or no one noticed them at school. So it would be wonderful to add two programs like that to our schools, so not just in gang violence with guns, but also gun violence in general.
Thank you. And I believe the next question starts with Julie. What do you think about charter schools?
Charter schools?
I think the priority that we need to focus on as a community, and especially here in Berkeley, is strengthening our public schools. I think that charter schools have surfaced across the country because people felt public schools were failing them. In Berkeley, we have a really strong public school education system, and we need to continue to reinforce that. We have one charter school here in Berkeley, and the school board is required to charter them if they meet the criteria that have been laid out. But I think the focus of what we need to do is strengthen our Berkeley public schools, and that's where our attention should be.
Thank you. Ty?
I think there's good charter schools out there, there's bad charter schools out there. In general, I'm not a fan of charter schools. I feel that they typically drain resources from traditional public schools, and they don't tend to have the same oversight and transparency and governance that traditional public schools have. So it's not that some charter schools aren't doing some really innovative work, educational work, but I don't generally support their expansion. As Julie mentioned, we only have one charter school in Berkeley, so the issue is not as salient in our district as it is in neighboring districts.
Thank you. Norma?
Charter schools arose like everything else that arose for profit. Food being for profit. How absurd. Charter schools are something that make money for people. I mean, Julie's right about the question about whether or not our schools are failing. Our schools are a failure for us. For the rich, they're fine. They serve the purpose. They're a result of corporatization and monetization, profiteering. Along with what's not workable is testing. I want that when a person is a carpenter and fixing my steps, that a child has an option to be with the carpenter, to help out, to learn, to be able to do things that feel good to do, instead of to have to sit in a classroom and use milk cartons cut up to make cities out of. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen these kinds of.
Thank you. Khadijah?
I am a supporter of the best public education that our students need. I am a teacher, a fifth grade teacher, and I am a teacher at a charter school. However, in my experience at my school, I've learned that there are two types of charter schools. There's one that is a for-profit charter school that is supported by these major companies. And then there are also nonprofit charter schools that work to support our students in the best way possible. There aren't a lot of charter schools that are doing it well. However, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my school that is doing the best thing that they can to support our students, and wasn't birthed out of angry parents, but birthed out of an educational program that is transformed to a school to support students in our communities. I support schools that are doing it well, and we here in Berkeley are very lucky to have wonderful public schools that are supporting our students well, and my goal and my vision is to keep our public schools that way.
Thank you. And Abdur?
In our public school, we have a lot of issues, and we need more funding to make them better. And I don't support the parallel education system like charter school, private or public, either way. And I don't see any need for that. Public school is good enough if you have enough resources, high quality teachers, and that should be good enough to for our children to do better. So charter school for me, no. And on the other hand, like the funding, public charter school, they come from same funding source. So I was surprised to learn that when I learned first about this. Why do we need that public charter school? Why not just public school? So I don't see any point to having the parallel education system. It's kind of segregation. It's actually serve some people's purpose to have a charter school and maybe create their own job. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. For the next question, we'll start with Ty. I'm going to combine, or actually just go ahead and ask the two questions, related questions from the audience. What is your position on the disparate treatment and punishment of African American students in the BUSD? And what ideas do you have to deal with certain parents' biases towards African American students?
Can you ask the last part of that question again?
The second question was, what ideas do you have to deal with certain parents' biases towards African American students? Ty?
Thank you for that question. So, as I mentioned in the opening, in my day job, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I represent people on death row. I see the effects of the school to prison pipeline on the prison end of it every single day. And one of my highest priorities on the board and continuing if I'm reelected is to interrupt that school to prison pipeline. We have completely revised our expulsion policy. We spent about 18 months working on that in the last couple of years. We've heavily invested in restorative justice programs that keep kids in school where all kids should be, no matter what they've done, as long as there's a way for them, if they've harmed other kids, for them to actually address the harm in a victim-centered way. That's been a really successful approach across the country, in Berkeley as well, but we need to continue to invest in people and in training around restorative justice.
Thank you. Norma?
Maintaining a really repressed group of people creates the divisions of how people get paid at all. If you know that there will be somebody getting less than you are feeling a little bit more secure in your position. Is that really? Oh. You feel better about your place at having the job that you have. Racism goes with that, and Black people have been the most oppressed and are still the most oppressed numerically, regardless of the civil rights movement, all the things about education, about pay, about living conditions come least to Black people. You know that. How does it happen? Well, it serves the system very well.
Thank you. Oh,
Okay.
thank you. Khadijah?
According to our California dashboard, where we find all of our data for our schools, there was, at the secondary level for BUSD, there was only a 1% increase in graduation rates for our African American students, but a 4.4% increase in suspension rates. So that perpetuates the school to prison pipeline, which Ty was talking about. And so there's more work that needs to be done. My position on the treatment of our African American students, and also parents who have a bias towards our African American students, my answer to that is two things. One, there must be more work that's done in restorative justice to keep our kids in school. And the final is there has to be cultural sensitivity training for all of our stakeholders, teachers, parents, and other students alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdur?
In terms of the achievement gap or prison pipeline, school pipeline, is to reduce that, to my view, I think as a parent, we should take responsibility, big time, because it's very important. Like if you, it's my children, it's my child, my daughter, my son, and if I just blame teachers, okay, why don't they teach my child as other child's? That's not good enough excuse. So we need to take responsibility for our own children and actually monitor them, what they're doing, and their learning outcome, and they're actually learning what they're supposed to learn. We need to monitor them weekly or daily basis, and then we take some responsibility about this. And also the bias about that, I think we need to, as a community, we need to learn from each other. And we need to look outside of the country, actually, to learn from other countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
So they've been asking us to move the mics closer, so apologize, I look like stepping right into the mic here. But, you know, I think it's a very complicated issue because when we set up the 2020 vision for Berkeley's children and youth 10 years ago, it was to eliminate racial predictability of academic success in our schools. It meant we did not want to walk into a kindergarten and be able to say, our African-American kids and our Latino kids aren't going to succeed just by looking at them. And so we set all these activities in motion, of which the City Council heard a report today. And we've seen a reduction in suspensions and disciplinary actions, but it's been disproportionate. and our African American and our Latino students are still having a higher percentage of these disciplinary actions. I agree with Khadijah. We need to look at cultural humility and cultural competency training of our entire teaching and classified staff. And we need to have dialogue and cultural humility training within our community. Our communities are gentrifying. Our populations are changing, and we need to learn about how to be sensitive with each other.
Thank you, Julie. And Julie, it appears your mic might not be working, either the switch or yes, or share with Ty. Okay, thank you. And let's see. For the next question, we're going to start with Norma again. Budget cuts are expected next year, despite the continuing economic boom. How will you cut the budget next year, and where will you cut it if a recession comes?
I'm going to go back to issues I think need to be recognized instead of repeating the same things over and over again. Testing. So the child goes off with the carpenter and, oh, thank you so much. The child goes off with the carpenter and does a job of fixing the steps. And then they test themselves by seeing whether they did a good job. See? And this is for anything that people do, is to see whether or not they're doing the thing that they wanted to get done and doing it properly. And if not, what else needs to be done? Because they work together with people who have done it before and are able to make it work satisfactorily. Testing is a bad tool, and it hurts people, drives people crazy. Everybody's a genius, and all of this gets repressed by the schooling so that people don't manifest that genius.
Thank you. Khadijah?
My opinion is that budgeting is a zero-sum process where there are gains and there are losses, and it needs to be taken seriously. And so, in keeping in mind that I will be hopefully an active member of the school board, I know that I will not be the only person on that team. And so it is, to me, not the most appropriate thing to answer that question right now, because there's dialogue that needs to happen with the entire members of the school board in order to move towards success for budgeting for our schools.
Thank you. Abdur?
Yes, in terms of budget cut, we need to actually investigate all the avenue we have, that what program is working and what is not working, and what resources we can reduce from some area, and very urgent need we can focus on those areas. And if I get elected, I'll look at it as a business perspective, because I'm an entrepreneur and a teacher myself. So I know that how to reduce the cost and effectively use that cost in different areas. So I'll focus on the various the area we have to look at closely that what is working and what we can reduce from one side and then put it on the other side. And that will be my approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
So this is a really good question, because there's not a lot of fat on the school district budget to do cuts, and they cut over $1 million, and last year, Ty can attest to that more clearly, and they're looking at another $1.5 million or $2 million in the coming year. So I agree with Khadijah. This is a community process. We have to identify what the priorities are and really work together to identify where the reductions are going to be, because wherever the reductions are, they're going to hurt. I also think we need to look at how to bring in new resources into the community and into our schools. I think we need to look at partnerships with our private sector, look at how we can infuse professional development by working with our higher ed partners, and look at our special ed program. We had a very comprehensive assessment, and there are some recommendations on what could both improve the program and also potentially look for some efficiencies. So I think there are some opportunities, but it won't be an easy task.
Thank you. Ty?
Thank you. So we are better off than a lot of other districts in the state, partly because we did make significant painful cuts last year, and because of the generosity of Berkeley taxpayers who have supported through BSEP low class sizes, supports for professional development, supports for struggling students. But we are going to have to make more cuts in the coming year. As Khadijah and Julie both said, it wouldn't be appropriate to say what we're going to cut now because we don't know. We have a very robust public process that we went through last year that we're about to start again this year, where we get input from parents, teachers, community members, classified staff about what they think the best areas to make reductions will be. I can say that as far as principals go, we try to make cuts as far away from the classroom as possible, and we try to fund only programs that we can back up with evidence or data or research to show that they work. We can't afford to have sacred cows. We have to look at all of our programs across the board to make these difficult decisions.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Khadijah, and I have the opportunity of combining several audience questions that focus on the same thing. We'll start with, what would you advocate as the best measures of achievement in our public schools? Someone else writes, what's your position on testing? And someone else writes, what do you consider authentic assessments? So achievement, testing, assessments. Can you speak to those, Khadijah?
So as I mentioned before, I am a 5th grade teacher. And in my everyday work, it is my duty to attest how students are grasping information. And so I do that through a couple of ways. First, giving standard assessments, as is our duty. The second way is to do informal assessments. Some of those look like quick checks or conversations with kids. But the most important thing is that we measure our assessment. There's measure our kids through some sort of assessment. There's so many conversations about which assessments are great and which assessments are not. And so I would love to engage in more conversations with all stakeholders to see which assessments would be most appropriate for our students here in Berkeley.
Thank you. Abdur.
Yes, in terms of identifying that our children, how they're doing in the school and who is doing good and who is not doing good, we have to introduce some assessment, of course. So the test is one way to do it, but a standardized test I'm talking about. But for young children like kindergarten and grade 1, grade 2, I think that's too early for them to have that kind of standard test. So that assessment, I think, should come from the teacher, so day-to-day basis. So teacher, they work with the children day-to-day basis. They have a better idea, like which students needs what, and how they learn, and what they learned, and what are the things they couldn't pick up. So they can put emphasis on that, and then they have an opinion on that children's education achievement. So I think that for the early age, from kindergarten to grade 2, I think should be through the internal assessment by the teacher, and other can be standard test.
Thank you. Julie.
So I believe that our education needs to be data informed, and it needs to be measured on whether or not our students are achieving. So we do need some level of standardized assessment. And it's good to have a standardized assessment that you can measure across the state so you can compare yourselves to like districts. I think one standard assessment within the different curriculum is enough, and I think local assessments like Khadijah was talking about, whether you do classroom check-ins or whether teachers have come together collaboratively to create a local assessment for a specific curriculum is really important. I think teachers have to be in partnership with the administration when they're looking at assessment. That's not something that the school board or the administration should be dictating on its own. I also believe that we need to support our teachers to collaborate in using the results of the assessment to inform their practice, because assessment for assessment's sake is useless.
Thank you. Ty?
Yeah, I want to pick up right where Julie left off. To me, the most valuable assessments are the assessments that inform instruction. So excellent teachers like Ms. Brown here, and my 10-year-old just said to me the other day, I wish Ms. Brown was my teacher. They're assessing their kids every day, and they use a variety of techniques. So some of it are standardized assessments, state tests, but those aren't usually the ones that inform instruction. There's video assessment, there's just observation, there's quizzes, there's local assessments, there's other teachers coming in and watching your class. There's so many different ways to gather the kind of data that Julie mentioned that can be used to actually improve your practice and improve the instruction. So many of the skills that we want our kids to have, confidence, leadership, public speaking, collaboration skills, those can't be measured by traditional standardized tests, but we really care about those, and we do want to assess how we're doing at teaching our kids those skills as well.
Thank you. And Norma.
All of this is because children are in error. There's something wrong with them and they have to be fixed. And we're going to put them through these processes that are antagonistic to them and fix them. But there's nothing wrong with the children. What's wrong is, and I say it again, it's the capitalist society that is demanding the obedience to getting ready to serve in it, to getting the mentality that is going to make them able to fit in to a very abusive society. And I know you're familiar with the abuse. You read the headlines in the newspapers and some of the other areas in the newspapers and on the TV. My book says that it says, School's the opposite of education, a study to release us from our confinement. It's very difficult for people to cut loose from the formations that we're accustomed to, like the 8-hour day, for example.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question will start with Abdur. What does authentic community engagement look like?
Authentic community engagement. I'm not very clear about this authentic means in here. I mean, the better way to communicate is, communication is always two-way work. It's not one way that I'm here talking and nobody's listening and nobody's responding to my question. That's just one-way communication. So communication had to be two-way communication, and that may produce some results. So to my understanding, authentic means that. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
Authentic communication to me is just like children learn in different styles. Communication has to happen in multiple modalities. And when I think of authentic communication, I really think of actually getting out into the community and talking to people where they are. And when I think about parents in our community, and particularly parents in our school community that are traditionally not engaged with typical school activities, the best way to get to them is through their after-school programs, through their faith communities, through their neighborhood associations, through their workplaces, through the laundromats, is we really need to reach out in different ways, not just with social media and newspaper, but through talking to people one-on-one. When the district launched the Local Control Accountability Plan, I was on the school board at the time, and Director Cutler and I, Leva Cutler and I, worked together to actually go out into the community and talk about what the Local Control Accountability Plan was in a way that people could really understand it.
Thank you. Ty?
Excuse me. Authentic community engagement is the opposite of lip service, and I think that sometimes community engagement can feel like lip service to parents and other members in the community. So I think to truly engage with the community in a way that's not just giving lip service to it or checking the box, definitely the things that Julie just mentioned, taking the time, it takes a lot of time, and so there has to be a real commitment on the part of the district. We're really going to put the time into this to be respectful of community members, and then make sure that we're engaging not just with the community members who come to the board meeting, but that we're engaging with a real representative group of community members. So that means doing the outreach that Julie said. It means real translation. It means real-time translation. It means being thoughtful about the times of day that different meetings are, so that we're actually trying to hear from people in the community because we really value what they have to say.
Thank you. Norma?
We live with the selective amnesia that lets us feel school was tolerable or wonderful, but it wasn't. It was painful to bear ourselves and to watch pupils who were less able to cope with the requirements be scolded, humiliated, and bullied. School stratifies us. Which of us passes, gets along, who of us is doomed to one degree or another of failure. Proceeding as though these are not the case is unfair to us all. We have to teach that the system abuses us. We don't like school. It hurts us. And it hurts the parents that have to send their children to school or do the homework with them that the child doesn't want to do, or sit and pay attention in a classroom that is giving material that is not holding their interest, which might hold their interest in 10 years, by the way. It's not that the material is altogether unacceptable.
Thank you. Khadijah.
Authentic community engagement is extremely important, and it goes along with the idea that our communities are only as good as our public schools. And so authentic community engagement looks like community partnerships where community members feel a sense of responsibility for the children that attend the schools in their neighborhoods and their areas. It looks like PTA partnered after-school programs. It looks like mentoring programs. And so to me, authentic community engagement is exemplified through some of those things. And it's important for us to continue that in our schools and also implement programs where more of that can take place.
Thank you. And for the next question, I believe we started with Julie. We start with Ty.
We start with Julie on this.
I think
With Julie?
I think I started with community engagement.
Okay, thank you. What do you see as BUSD's greatest challenge, and what is BUSD's greatest asset or strength?
Oh. I think our schools are only as great as our teachers and staff are. Sorry. I think our schools are as great as our teachers and staff, and I think Berkeley has a tremendous teaching and staff pool. And I think it's our greatest challenge because our teachers and staff can't afford to live here. I think the cost of living has far exceeded the wages and salaries that our school employees are able to have. And I think it's up to us as a school board and as a community as a whole to figure out what it is we're going to do to try to retain our teachers and staff and our other public servants in this community. We need to look at a competitive salary package. We need to look at housing. And we need to keep the high quality teachers that we have, and we need to be able to retain and recruit more for our kids.
Thank you.
So I agree with those two, but I won't say the same two. I think our greatest challenge is that the racial predictability that Julie mentioned as the impetus for creating the 2020 vision in the first place, while we've made strides, is still a reality in our schools. We still can predict achievement. We can still predict discipline on the basis of race, and I think that is our most urgent priority. Of course, our teachers are wonderful, and our classified staff are incredible, and they're an incredible asset. I'll go with the parent and guardian community in this town. It's an passionate, engaged, educated community that wants to have the authentic engagement with the district that we were talking about in the last question, and we need to do everything we can to harness that incredible asset that we have.
Thank you. Norma?
One of the things that is most alienating for the children is not being allowed to be a productive member of society. They're told, they look and they say, well, my folks go off to work every day and that's productive. They don't say productive, but they recognize the difference between them and the adults. I say that everybody needs to be a productive, contributing member of society. Everybody has the desire to appear in a place where they are doing something that the community wants done that would otherwise be getting paid for doing it, although I'm opposed to paid labor. As if you can't tell, that's the way that I advocate. Being a deep communist, as I am, I want cooperation, which is the opposite of what the capitalist system is about. You know, the capitalist system is here to hurt us for not conforming.
Thank you. Khadijah.
In terms of our challenges, I believe we aren't doing enough work to support all of our learners. And so when I say that, I mean, specifically, there was a recent study of our SPED program. And in the study, we found that we in BUSD were both under-identifying and over-identifying some of our SPED students. Approximately 136 of our SPED students were over-identified, which has direct effects to our budget. So we need to do more work to support all of our learners, specifically our at-risk and most needy learners. And so those are some of the challenges I think we have. We are doing really well. One of our assets is our teachers. I would have to agree with Julie. And I'm not just saying this because I am a teacher, but because I am a BUSD grad, I can say with confidence we have some of the best teachers in the Berkeley Unified School District. And so that's our greatest asset. And our public schools are only as good as our public teachers. And so we have some of the best teachers here.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can ramble about teachers.
Abdur.
Yes, in terms of the strength that Berkeley has is like all the Bay Area has actually, to have high quality educated people live here because it's expensive. So people are not educated, not enough money, they can't able to live here at all. And the other strength, we have the UC Berkeley. So we have the #1 world public university here. So we have a lot of talented and extraordinary people live here, and they have their family, friends around them. So that's the strength, and that's why we have best teachers here. And the weakness I think we have here is, if I look at the talk, actually 12 September from one of the director, she mentioned in the meeting that 12 years, she did not see any change on African American achievement gap. That's pretty sad. Pretty sad. 12 years, no change. So that's pretty sad. So what is the problem? I think is the problem with myself as a parent. I think we're not paying enough attention to our children.
Thank you.
I recognize.
Thank you. So for the next question, I'll start with Ty. I believe, how important are the union's contributions to the running of the schools?
Critically important. So we have 4 unions. Our teachers, our classified union, our administrators, and our classified managers. We have a generally wonderful relationship with our unions. Our bargaining units are the backbone of the district and critical to everything that we do.
Thank you. Norma?
We're extremely disorganized. We don't have common interests. We don't have a way of expressing common interests because the realm of common interests is the alienation that I've been speaking of up until now. The separation of who's going to do well and how are we going to make them do well and how are we going to find out how people are going to do well. This is because the opportunity to do well is not available for most people. And even the successes, I'm collecting a book, a list of what work seems to make sense. What would be the jobs, the activities in a communist society that makes sense for a community. Well, obviously growing food, but you want to do it in a relevant way, or building or not building, taking down buildings. The construction.
Thank you. Khadijah.
Our unions are extremely important to our success in BUSD, and also the relationship with the unions and the school board is extremely important as well. Unions should, as well as everyone else, unions should definitely have a say-so in how things are taken care of in our district, especially when it relates to budgeting and cuts that will affect our union members.
Thank you. Abdur.
Yes, I think union is pretty critical to have to work together, and the union can represent people to the board or to the government, and this is very important for teachers or any level of employees. And myself, like I became a faculty of San Francisco State University last semester, and I immediately joined to the union. So I understand the importance of the union and their contribution to the education in the schools and colleges and the universities as well. So we, as a community, we need to work together, and we need unions. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie.
So unions provide a really valuable role, especially from the perspective of a school board. With 4 unions in the district, what they're able to do is represent the needs of their members. There's no way I, as a school board member, could go and find out what all of the different staff communities need. But the unions together, they organize and they come forward to the school board with their issues. We may not always agree, but we know that they've gone through a collaborative process to come up with their priorities. The unions in Berkeley are, I don't know if they're unique, but they're definitely unusual in the sense that they're not just there representing their employees' demands around salaries and benefits and working conditions. They're partners in education. They're partners in founding the 2020 vision. They're partners in trying to address the housing crisis in Berkeley. They're partners with the school board, with the administrators, with our city officials, to really grapple with the issues that our children and our students are facing in our schools.
Thank you. And thank you for not using your full minute in the last question. It allows me to sneak in one last question, which will be our final question so that we can end on time. And this one will start with Norma. And feel free to have a brief answer to this one as well, if you'd like. What do you think is the right start date for the school year?
January 1st.
I think every day should be something where people expend their time. Well, people talk about, oh, thanks. People spend their time doing things that are that are good to do together and not separated because of the age or the failure or these issues that I've mentioned, but because of things that need to be done or we want to do in society. The idea that they have to be boxed in and go through 12 years of learning how not to read is a very sad kind of operation, and what we want is people living meaningfully from the time they can get up and walk around and carry their little rake to someplace and rake up a little thing and be greeted as a productive person in society, or if they're 90 years old and being productive in society.
Thank you. Thank you. Khadijah?
There are a certain number of instructional days that each student must receive. And so as long as we are following within those instructional days, I would be willing to hear other people's ideas about when school should start. As a teacher, I would love for school to start after Labor Day, but understand the importance of school starting a little bit earlier. Thank you.
Abdur?
Yes, it's an interesting question, actually. So the summer here is pretty long, I think. I've been through many countries, as I mentioned, and went to school everywhere. And summer is very long here. So I think we should cut short the summer a little bit and start a little early to head on to the issues of learning. I mean, learning should be fun, and I mean, it, I mean, starting in August it works somewhat, but I think early start is better probably because summer is too long, and I think we should cut short the show, if possible.
Thank you. Julie?
I think I agree with Khadijah. It's like there's 180 days that we have to have for instructional days, and when we actually start is a community decision. The one thing that I'd love to see, though, is more collaboration with our neighboring districts so that start dates and vacation dates coincide with each other. I think it's really hard for our communities, especially for our kids who are involved in a lot of different kinds of activities, or parents who may have, work in one city and kids in another, to be juggling the varying schedules of schools across the East Bay. I would also like, the Brown just, I think, vetoed the what time schools should start, with that being a local control issue. But I think the research around how early schools start, particularly for middle and high school, is something that should be taken into consideration, and we should look at a more extended day versus the early starts that we have.
Thank you. Ty?
Yeah, well, I work at UC, and when our kids were little, we had 2 kids in preschool and 1 in BUSD, and one year we had 4 different spring breaks, so I'm all for coordination. We experimented this year, I don't know if it's an experiment, we started this year on a Monday instead of a Tuesday or a Wednesday so that we could have a week off for Thanksgiving. So I'm all in favor of that, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. In a moment, we'll move on to closing statements. I just want to remind the audience that in this election, there are 6 candidates for 3 open seats. Hopefully I have that correct. Yes. And I want to speak a little bit about the league before I put the floor back to the candidates for their closing statements. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, I'd like to thank the candidates for running for office and for your participation in the evening. I want to also thank the audience for engaging in democracy and for some really great questions. For further information about upcoming forums, the candidates' pros and cons, and positions on ballot measures, please visit the League's website, lwvbae.org or votersedge.org/ca. We invite you to join the League to help us defend democracy. We do so much more than voter registration and education. Visit our website, our Facebook page, and our Twitter account at LWVBAE. The deadline to register for vote, to register to vote is October 22nd this year. You can register online at the Secretary of State's websites, sos.ca.gov, or you can register or re-register to vote here tonight. We have forms out in the lobby at our table. Remember to vote by mail or or at the polls by Tuesday, November 6th. And now let's move on to the candidates' closing statements. And we'll do this in reverse order that we began. And we'll start with Ty and then move on to Julie down the line. And thank you. You have 1.5 minutes for the closing statements. And we'll start with Ty.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out here, and thanks to the League. We talked about a lot of things. We didn't get a chance to talk about some really important things we've done in the district over the past few years. We revamped the 9th grade at Berkeley High. We've greatly expanded our career technical education pathways at the high school. We've protected our undocumented students. We've established a middle school English language arts curriculum. We've done a lot of things, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. I have a lot of endorsements from the Teachers Union, from the Democratic Party, from the Berkeley Democratic Club, Wellstone. I'm really honored to have the support of 2 of my fellow candidates, Julie Sinai and Khadijah Brown, and I strongly support them as well. I'm really excited about the prospect of having a teacher on the school board, and I hope that you all will consider supporting Khadijah. And I think that we're losing 2 board members who collectively have 20 years of experience on the board. We need someone with Julie's experience from early childhood education all the way up through higher education on the board. So I'm really looking forward to serving with both of them. And they've also been endorsed, I'm sure they'll mention, by the Teachers Union, the Democratic Party, and a number of hundreds of parents and teachers across the city. So thank you, and thank you for your support.
Julie.
Thank you. Well, now I don't have to mention my endorsements. No. I too want to thank the League and all of you who came out this evening. I really appreciate the time that you're taking. I think we've got some major issues that we have to grapple with, and I want to really say right now that I would like to issue a renewed call to action around the opportunity and the achievement gap in Berkeley. We just sat through a presentation in front of the Berkeley City Council looking at the last 10 years of the 2020 vision for Berkeley's children and youth, and we have not had the results that we intended to. And we need to sit back, we need to look at what was working, what isn't working, what we need to do differently. So as a school board member, it is my job to work together with the community to challenge our school district to do a better job and to work across jurisdictions with the city, with the university, with our community-based partners to really draw attention to what is going to help serve the African American and Latino kids in our community as well as the whole. I, like Ty and Khadijah, we have the support of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers. I'm honored to have the Berkeley Firefighters Association and the trade union as well as the Labor Council because of the work that we've done around career education. 1 in 3 Berkeley High students, for the first time in decades, is involved in a career pathway. That means their curriculum is contextualized and brought to real life so that when they think about their post-secondary education, it's in real terms of what their future can bring them.
Thank you. Abdur.
It is very sad that I'm talking about the audience. Like, it is very sad that people only like-minded people. And if you want to really change to see anything, you cannot do that with like-minded people. You need people from different background, different perspective, different set of eyes to make changes. That's why last 12 years, there's no change in achievement gap. What they're doing in the board of directors, what they're doing, I don't know. And I urge to people, the voters of Berkeley, think about it. And an education board of education or a school board should reflect the community members. So in here, if you look at the demography, 19% Asian, 9% African American. So that should reflect the board members, board of directors election. So please think about that before you make a decision. Think about that. And for myself, I can say that I'm the strongest candidate among here. I have a PhD in computer science and MBA. I'm doing it right now. And I have running business for 8 years. So I know how to do things. And I believe that I'm the strongest candidate and people should think about it. And then they give your precious vote to people that can make changes. That's one. And the another thing is like, so if you see that, it is very sad that people who live here in Berkeley, highly educated area, but only 50% people vote. Please vote. Please go out and vote. Thank you.
Khadijah.
Thanks so much to the League of Women Voters for putting this together and giving all of the candidates an opportunity to share their vision for the Berkeley Unified School District. Also, thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. I know it's a pretty late evening, so thank you so much for taking your time to engage in this process. I'm excited about what's to come for the Berkeley Unified School District, and I'm excited about the opportunity of doing more work in our district. I think the current board has done an incredible job with working towards closing our achievement gap and also starting restorative justice programs in our schools. But I think there is more work that needs to be done, and I'm excited about the opportunity of taking the baton and running the race to make sure that our schools are better for our children. I'm excited and happy, along with Ty and Julie, to be endorsed by the Berkeley Federation of Teachers, the Alameda County Democratic Club, the Alameda Labor Council, the Berkeley Democratic Club, Wellstone Democratic Club, Senator Nancy Skinner, Assemblymember Tony Thurman, our very own mayor, the entire current school board, and numerous other council members, both current and former, and as well as a host of educators and community members. One of my favorite sayings is Kasiri and Injira, which means, and how are the children? I'm excited to do the work to ensure that all of our children in Berkeley are well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Norma.
I reiterate, children are fine. They come out of their mother, they give a little cry, the parent answers back, there's communication, there's creative thinking. And this goes on for the rest of their lives, except it gets stymied through school where they have to perform in a certain way. I want it to be that people perform together in ways that make sense to us. Not in the sense of selling insurance to people. Selling insurance to people is a bad thing to do. Cuba, if they have a house gets knocked down, they create another living space for people. There doesn't have to have been insurance. There is another way to live. Now, Cuba uses the same kind of schooling that we do, which is unfortunate, and I think the people are going to grow up and be opposed to being so confined and controlled and not having a place to recognize that this is a repressive environment. So we'll see what happens, and we have seen some modifications as it is. The children need to do things that make sense to people instead of having to say, am I going to have that test? Oh, I have to get there. I have to do this and that. And the parent has to cooperate in that oppression.
Thank you.
And is uncomfortable about it.
Thank you. Let's give our candidates a round of applause. Thank you. That's all the time we have for tonight. And remember to register and remember to vote. Thank you and good night.
Very nice meeting you.
You too. Thank you.
I just wanted to remind you all that outside our Voters Edge bookmarks, Voters Edge is a really amazing resource. It's not partisan. So you go to the website, you put in your address, and it gives you everything that's going to be on your ballot. It gives you pros and cons, it gives you campaigns for things, it gives you endorsements. So if the candidates have not filled out your Voters Edge profiles, please make sure you do it, and you can check them all out online. The other thing I wanted to highlight before you all leave is that we have a candidate forum coming up for the Assembly District 15. There are some flyers outside that you are welcome to take. We hope to see you all there. And there are other events that are coming up as well. So please check out our website, as Nick said earlier. And thank you so much.
Does this still work? Okay. I want to tell you that they have put out pitchers of water and cups. We don't have any plastic bottles up here of water. And that gets a round of applause. We're killing ourselves.